Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our listener today has given us, well, just an incredible stack of sources. It's like opening a portal straight into the golden age of Islam, into these grand libraries of world literature.
Absolutely. We're diving deep into one of the most enduring, maybe one of the most complex narrative collections ever put together, the Arabian Nights.
And specifically, we're drilling down into some really famous tales. We've got Sindbad the Sailor, Aladdin, and then these wildly ironic, sometimes pretty cruel games played by the sovereign himself, the Khalifa Harun ar-Rashid.
It's a massive collection. Honestly, a bit overwhelming. It's packed with magic, incredible peril, and some really profound lessons, I think, about human nature.
Yeah.
And our mission, as always, isn't just to, retell these classic adventures. We want to act as your guides, try and extract those surprising, sometimes kind of unsettling nuggets of knowledge that are woven into these stories.
Especially about fortune, right? How it's won and lost.
Exactly. What do these tales teach us about the paths to wealth? And we're going to see completely different routes. Wealth that's agonizingly earned through just sheer survival, then wealth that seems to appear instantly through sorcery, and then fortune that's just, well, maybe a cruel twist of fate, or maybe a kind one, dictated entirely by a king's whim.
Okay, let's unpack that right away. The source material sets this up perfectly. We start in Baghdad, the abode of peace, under the famous Harun ar-Rashid. And we meet two men right at the start. Sindbad the landsman, who's a poor porter just struggling, and then Sindbad the sailor, a rich merchant whose wealth seems, well, frankly, inexhaustible. His house is always open for these lavish entertainments. Magnificent, the text says, second only to those held by ar-Rashid himself.
The supreme ruler.
Yeah, and let's just clarify that title. When we talk about the Khalifa, we mean the Caliph. He's the absolute sovereign, the spiritual head of the Muslim world at that time.
And that contrast between the two Sindbads, it's literally the hook for the whole narrative cycle. The landsman, sweating, carrying his load, sits outside the sailor's amazing mansion, and he starts complaining to God about how unfair life is, the different lots given to men.
Understandable, really.
Totally. But the sailor overhears him, and instead of getting angry, he's actually impressed by the landsman's humility, his eloquence, the aptness of his verse. And that prompts the big reveal, the reason he tells his story. He basically says, look, this lavish life, it wasn't easy trade. It wasn't inherited wealth I kept. It was brutal survival, raw survival and constant resourcefulness against absolutely impossible odds.
So that's what our deep dive today is really focusing on, pulling out the core of those experiences. We're going to explore fortune through, let's say, three distinct pillars.
Okay.
First, sheer survival and ingenuity. That's Sindbad's path, escaping just deadly perils, natural and, well, unnatural.
Right.
Second, magic and stratagem. That's Aladdin's world. Mastering hidden, often really dangerous powers to get staggering wealth and, political influence. And third, irony and the Khalifa's will. This is where fate, simple curiosity, and outright trickery lead to these huge consequences, all dictated by the sovereign's absolute, sometimes arbitrary power.
Sounds like a plan. Where do we start?
Let's begin with that first pillar, the foundation of Sindbad's immense wealth, just relentless self-preservation. He lived this life of complete luxury when we meet him, but the source material is really clear. This is his second fortune. The story actually kicks off with his initial inheritance.
Precisely. His father died when he was young, left him a decent amount. But when he came of age, well, he fell into the classic traps of easy money. He spent years in what the sources describe as sumptuous living.
Living it up.
Totally. Hanging out with the richest young guys in Baghdad, indulging every whim with absolutely no thought for the morrow, as the text puts it. And this goes on until suddenly, with this sense of dismay, he realizes he's completely broke. Utter poverty.
It's that classic arc, isn't it? Rags to riches, then bam, back to rags. But the key moment is the reset. He doesn't just despair.
No, he doesn't.
He pulls himself together. He sells off whatever little he has left, furniture, belongings, and gets 3,000 pieces of silver. That small sum, that's his starting stake. That's what sends him off to sea on the first of these legendary, terrifying voyages.
And that very first voyage, it sets the pattern immediately. His career isn't defined by successful trading deals. It's defined by failure, disaster, and near-death experiences right from the start.
Yeah, the terror begins almost immediately. They land on what seems like this perfect little island. The text calls it a garden that had floated from off the sides of paradise. Sounds idyllic.
It does. They light fires, they start relaxing, maybe cooking, having a good time. Seems like the perfect spot to rest.
But then you get that chilling realization. The ship's master starts yelling frantically from the deck.
Yeah, he cries out, "Hasten back and leave everything. Save yourselves from sudden death, for this that you think is an island is not such. It is a mighty fish,
A leviathan.
lying entranced in sleep on the surface of the sea since times of old."
Wow. Their fires, their noise, it woke this ancient, sleeping giant from the deep.
And it just starts to move. A terrifying turmoil, the sources say. It sinks right out from under them. Many of the merchants drown instantly. Sindbad gets pulled down fathoms deep.
And what's amazing here is the sheer luck, or maybe it's just immediate, desperate ingenuity that saves him. He doesn't find a proper lifeboat or even a plank.
No, he grabs onto a large wooden bowl, something someone was probably using for washing or mixing dough. He clings to this bowl using his hands and feet to steady himself, just floating adrift.
Well, the ship just sails away.
Sails away, leaving him completely for dead. Fortune for Sindbad starts with a wooden bowl, and then it demands sheer, unrelenting tenacity just to hold onto it.
That tenacity, that refusal to die, is absolutely central to the second voyage, too. He gets abandoned again, falls asleep on what he thinks is a safe island during a stop, wakes up, and the ship is gone. He's alone on an uninhabited island.
Right. And eventually, wandering around, he spots something strange in the distance. This gigantic white dome. Smooth, huge. He measures it 50 paces in circumference.
And then the dawning horror as he realizes what it is.
It's the egg of the monstrous rook.
We have to emphasize what a rook is supposed to be. This isn't just a big bird.
No, this is a creature of legend, so enormous, the sources explicitly tell us, it feeds its young on elephants.
Elephants.
Yeah. Sindbad knows instantly he's in a valley ruled by terrifying, monstrous scale. And this discovery leads him eventually to the famous Valley of Diamonds, which is also conveniently infested with gigantic serpents.
Of course it is. But here's where the story gets really interesting, because it sort of verifies an old traveler's tale, right?
Yeah.
Our sources detail this seemingly crazy method merchants supposedly use to get diamonds.
Yeah.
And Sindbad watches it happen.
That's right. The merchants from the cliffs above throw down these huge chunks of slaughtered meat into the valley. The meat lands on the diamonds scattered everywhere, and the sticky blood makes the gems adhere to it.
And
then the vultures, the giant kind, the text specifies, swoop down, grab these meat and diamond parcels, and fly them up to the mountaintops, which is apparently their favorite feeding place, littered with bleached bones. The merchants then rush out, scare the vultures away, and collect the diamonds stuck to the meat.
it sounds completely bonkers.
It does. And what's really interesting is Sindbad's reaction. He says he'd heard the story before, but always regarded it with a half-shut eye, like, yeah, right. But now, trapped in the valley, facing giant serpents, he realizes this bizarre, almost folkloric method is actually his only chance of escape.
What does he do?
He acts. He finds a huge piece of flayed meat, gathers up a pouch full of the biggest diamonds he can find, and then binds himself firmly to the carcass using his turban, just straps himself onto this piece of dead animal.
Waiting for a giant vulture to pick him up? That takes guts.
Or desperation. And it works. A monstrous vulture seizes the carcass with Sindbad attached and deposits him right on the mountain summit amongst the waiting merchants and the scattered bones.
And the immediate psychological shift. He lands, unharmed, amongst these merchants who are probably grumbling because the piece of meat the vulture brought this time didn't seem to have many diamonds on it.
Exactly. They're disappointed. And then Sindbad, probably brushing himself off, reveals his secret. He says something like, "Don't worry, I carry an abundance of these stones, and the largest size too." He shows them his pouch, filled with diamonds he picked up from the valley floor, hidden amongst what they thought were just worthless bones.
That's the moment, isn't it? He goes from being just a victim of fate, abandoned and desperate, to someone actively using the system, using stratagem to secure his fortune.
Absolutely. He turns the legend to his advantage. But the perils, they just keep escalating. The third voyage is brutal. After a terrible storm, they're driven to the Mountain of Apes.
And these aren't cute monkeys.
No way. Hideous black apes, the text says, with astonishing strength. They swarm the ship, sever the ropes holding the sails, making the ship useless. Then they seize the crew, abandon them on the island, and set the ship adrift. Just pure malice.
And then the crew gets captured by something worse.
Much worse. This monstrous black being. An ogre, maybe a ghoul. The description is pure nightmare fuel, eyes like blazing fire, two gleaming tusks like a boar's, a huge mouth, and nails like the sharp claws of a beast.
But the most horrifying part is the selection process. It's not random violence. It's chillingly rational. in a grotesque way.
It is. The ogre grabs the men one by one, turns them over and over, and actually feels their limbs to see if they're fat enough to eat.
Good Lord.
And Sindbad, he's spared, the text explicitly states, only because he is lean and wasted with fatigue and affliction.
His suffering literally saves his life again.
Right, but escaping the ogre just leads them into the path of the next horror. A gigantic serpent. It coils around and swallows 2 of his companions whole. Sindbad hears the horrible crackling of bones.
So how does he survive this?
Yeah.
He can't exactly outrun a giant serpent on an island.
His genius for desperation kicks in again. He knows he can't fight it. It hunts by scent. It swallows things whole. So he has to outthink it. He gathers pieces of wood from the shore.
Okay.
He binds a long piece crosswise to the soles of his feet, another piece across the back of his head, then flat pieces to his sides, his left and right, and one over his chest. He basically lies down and encases himself in this makeshift wooden frame.
Like a human crate.
Pretty much. He lies there like a dead man in a box. The serpent comes, tries to swallow him all night. It senses him, coils around him, but it can't get its jaws around the wooden structure. It keeps bumping against the wood.
That's brilliant.
It's incredible ingenuity under duress. Finally, as morning breaks, the serpent gives up, consumed with rage and vexation, the text says, and slithers away.
That is the absolute essence of the Sindbad method, isn't it? Not fighting strength with strength, but using his wits, using materials at hand to outthink a natural or unnatural predator.
Exactly. He survives through cleverness, born of absolute terror.
His commitment to just staying alive is incredible, but the 4th voyage, that introduces a different kind of danger. It's not beasts or storms this time. It's enforced cultural custom, which turns out to be just as deadly.
Right. They get shipwrecked again, this time among a tribe the text calls magi, but they act like ghouls or cannibals. His companions, starving, start eating this strange local food offered to them, mixed with coconut oil.
And that's a mistake.
A huge mistake. The food makes them mad with a ravenous hunger. Their eyes roll, they lose their reason, and they just start eating constantly, fattening up like stupid beasts of the field, ready for the tribe to slaughter and eat them.
But Sindbad doesn't eat it.
Again, his caution, maybe his inherent suspicion, saves him. He rejects the food, pretends to eat, and stays lean and keeps his wits. He eventually escapes that initial group. But the next encounter is the truly terrifying part.
He ends up in a different kingdom on the same island, a more civilized one, and he actually marries a woman of high rank there.
Yeah.
Seems like things are finally looking up.
For a moment, but then his wife gets sick and dies, and he learns about the local burial custom. It's mandatory.
And the custom is?
When a spouse dies, the living partner must be buried alive with them in a communal vault on the seashore. The rationale given is that neither should continue to enjoy life alone while the other is gone. It's presented as a law of companionship, even in death.
Buried alive. That's horrific. How does he possibly get out of that? This isn't a monster he can trick. It's the law of the land, enforced by the king himself.
This is where the story takes a really dark, morally challenging turn. He can't refuse. He's lowered into this dark cavern, this vault filled with decaying bodies and bones, with just a small pitcher of water and 7 little cakes of bread, the standard ration for the condemned survivor.
So, how does he survive longer than the 7 cakes allow?
He becomes a predator within the tomb. When the next person is buried alive, a man whose wife had died, Sindbad waits until the man is lowered, weeping and wailing, wishing for death, and Sindbad basically grants his wish. He picks up a stout leg bone from one of the previous skeletons and strikes the man dead. Then he takes his pitcher of water and his 7 cakes.
He murders other mourners for their supplies.
Repeatedly. Every time someone new is lowered into the vault, male or female, Sindbad kills them with the leg bone and takes their meager rations. The text is quite blunt about it. He sustains his life this way.
Okay, wait. Let's just pause on that. That's incredibly dark. He doesn't just kill once in self-defense. He establishes a system. He becomes the terror within the tomb, preying on the grief-stricken for survival. How does the narrative handle that? Is he condemned for this?
That's what's fascinating. The Arabian Nights often present survival as its own justification. The focus is less on our modern sense of morality and more on the sheer mechanics of staying alive against impossible odds. Sindbad is justified in the narrative simply because he lives. His actions are framed as necessary measures in a place where death is the norm.
Necessary cruelty, then.
Precisely. He calls it dealing merciful death. He survives this way for an unmeasured time, losing track of days, calling an hour a day a year. This isn't just survival, it's the normalization of morally gray, even reprehensible actions when pushed to the absolute limit. The fortune he eventually escapes with is built, in part, on the murder of the unfortunate.
How does he finally escape this tomb?
Pure chance, combined with his relentless drive. He hears a scratching sound, an animal digging. He follows the sound, convinced it must lead somewhere. It's described as a wild beast, but it later seems it might have been digging a passage between the vault and the outside. He follows it, widens the crevice it made.
Finds a pinprick of light.
Exactly, a tiny opening leading out to the seashore. He forces his way through, escaping the tomb. And even then, the text notes, before he flags down a passing ship, he goes back into the cavern several times.
To do what?
To collect the reward of cakes and water in return for merciful death dealt by my hand. And also, importantly, the jewels and ornaments from the bodies of those buried there. He effectively institutionalized his killing spree for profit before leaving.
Wow. So the fortune he brings back to Baghdad from this voyage is literally plundered from the dead he dispatched himself.
Fundamentally tainted, yes. It's a fortune rooted in ruthless, violent, and ethically very murky resourcefulness.
Which brings us, I suppose, to the fifth voyage and the famous Old Man of the Sea. Another disaster first, of course.
Naturally. Merchants on his ship foolishly kill a young rock they find. Big mistake. The parent rocks retaliate, dropping huge rocks from the sky, smashing the ship to pieces. Sindbad, predictably, survives the wreck.
And washes ashore. Again?
Washes ashore and comes upon this old man. Seems harmless, even comely, the text says, with silver locks sitting by a stream. The old man signals, using gestures, that he wants Sindbad to carry him across the water.
And Sindbad, maybe feeling a bit charitable after all he's been through.
Or maybe just seeing a seemingly frail old person. He agrees. He hoists the old man onto his shoulders, and the moment they're across the stream, the betrayal is instant and violent. The old man wraps his legs around Sindbad's neck like vices, pressing his feet brutally into his chest. He becomes Sindbad's captor, riding him like an animal, beating him to compel obedience. This is the legendary Old Man of the Sea.
It's such a powerful image. Kindness repaid with absolute bondage. How does he escape this time? You can't reason with him, presumably.
No. The estate is brilliant and actually kind of symbolic. Sindbad finds gourds, fills them with grape juice, and leaves them in the sun to ferment. He makes crude wine.
Getting the old man drunk.
Not initially. Sindbad drinks it himself first, perhaps just to numb his misery. He gets intoxicated, starts laughing, singing, dancing around erratically. The old man, who's been relentlessly grim and controlling, sees this apparent joy and wants some. He signals for the gourd.
A fatal mistake for the old man.
A fatal mistake. He drinks deeply, enjoys the effect, gets thoroughly drunk, and crucially, his death grip loosens. He becomes unsteady, sways, and eventually falls off Sindbad's shoulders.
And Sindbad doesn't hesitate.
No hesitation. Sindbad immediately seizes a large stone and crushes the old man's head. Freedom, again, comes through violence, but this time it's triggered by exploiting a very human weakness, the desire for intoxication and escape in his monstrous captor.
It's another perfect summary of that first pillar, isn't it? Using human folly, ingenuity, and necessary violence to overcome overwhelming peril. His fortune is earned through blood, through wit, and just sheer unbelievable force of will.
Every single piece of it.
Okay, so we've seen how rugged, often bloody individualism can build a fortune from nothing. But as you said, that's not the only way. Some people find a shortcut, a much faster route.
Indeed. Which brings us neatly to our second pillar of fortune. Magic, deception, and desire. And the prime example here is Aladdin.
Right. Son of a poor tailor in, the text says, Cathay, which usually means China in these stories. And he's explicitly described as a born ne'er-do-well. A lazy kid, resists learning any trade, just wants to play games in the street with other boys.
His entire trajectory changes because of external manipulation. Enter the villain. The accursed sorcerer, a dervish who travels all the way from the Maghreb, the land of the Moors in northwest Africa, specifically seeking Aladdin.
Why Aladdin?
The sorcerer needs him. He uses a classic deception. He pretends to be Aladdin's long-lost uncle, weeping dramatically over the death of Aladdin's father, the tailor.
Pure social engineering.
Absolutely. He plays on the family's poverty and grief. He showers Aladdin with gifts, gold coins, rich food, fancy new clothes, transforming him into looking like a merchant's son. It's all designed to win the boy's trust, make him obedient, and leverage Aladdin's immaturity and his obvious desire for luxury without work.
And the goal of all this grooming?
Access.
Yeah.
Access to a specific subterranean cavern sealed by magic, and ultimately to the source of unimaginable power hidden within it, the lamp.
So the sorcerer takes Aladdin out to the hillsides, performs some kind of ritual.
Incantations, burning incense, the ground trembles and splits open, revealing a heavy stone slab with a brass ring. And here's the crucial part. The sorcerer tells Aladdin that only he can lift this slab. He has to speak the names of his father and grandfather as he pulls.
Why only Aladdin?
The magic requires it. It will yield to no hand but thine, the sorcerer says. This makes Aladdin the indispensable key, the chosen one, even though he has no idea what he's really chosen for. He's just the unwitting tool.
He lifts the slab, reveals steps going down into darkness, and the sorcerer gives him very specific instructions.
Extremely specific and deadly serious. Aladdin must go down, pass through several chambers, but touch nothing. Especially not the 4 large golden vessels brimming with gold in the first chambers. If he touches anything, the spell is broken, and he'll be instantly turned into black stone.
High stakes.
Ah.
So avoid the obvious treasure. What's the actual mission?
His sole task is to reach the final alcove where a lamp is hanging. He must take the lamp, pour out the oil inside it, and put the empty lamp securely in his breast, inside his robe. Then come back out immediately.
But Aladdin, being a kid, gets distracted, doesn't he?
He does. He follows the instructions about not touching the gold vessels. But when he reaches the final cavern, the one before the lamp, he finds himself in this incredible underground garden where the trees bear fruit made of dazzling jewels.
Jewel fruit.
Exactly. Bright, sparkling gems of all colors. He thinks they're just colored glass, pretty trinkets, but he can't resist. He starts picking them, stuffing his pockets, filling the folds of his robe, replacing the actual fruit he'd brought for food. He thinks they're worthless, but they're heavy.
A small act of disobedience, driven by curiosity,
Yeah.
not greed for the gold he was warned about.
Right. But it almost costs him everything. He gets the lamp, empties it, puts it away safely, but climbing back up the steep steps, weighed down by these glass fruits, he struggles. He asks the uncle waiting at the top to help him out.
And the sorcerer?
The sorcerer only cares about one thing, the lamp. He demands Aladdin hand it up first. Aladdin may be suspicious now, or maybe just unable to reach it easily while burdened, refuses. He wants to be helped out first. The sorcerer flies into a rage, realizes he can't get the lamp without Aladdin, mutters another incantation, and the stone slag slams shut, sealing Aladdin inside.
Trapped, with a worthless old lamp and pockets full of glass.
Exactly. Total despair. He's certain he's going to die in the dark. And it's in that moment of hopelessness that the first magic reveals itself. He's wringing his hands, maybe praying, and he accidentally rubs the ring the sorcerer had given him earlier for protection.
A ring. I forgot about the ring.
Easy to forget, but crucial. Suddenly, this luminous haze appears before him, solidifying into a figure. This is the slave of the ring.
A genie.
A type of genie, yes.
Huh.
Less powerful than what's coming, but potent enough. It asks what Aladdin commands. Aladdin, terrified but desperate, just asks to be taken out of the cavern, and poof, he's instantly transported back to the surface near the entrance, now sealed.
Wow. Okay, so that brings us to the really important distinction here, the 2 sources of power.
Critical distinction. You have the slave of the ring, summoned by rubbing the ring. He seems geared towards immediate personal survival, getting Aladdin out of the cave, providing food later when he's starving. Practical help.
But then there's the lamp.
Ah, the lamp. Back home, destitute again, his mother is cleaning the old, dirty lamp Aladdin brought back, hoping to sell it. As she rubs it,
The real power emerges.
the slave of the lamp. And this is explicitly identified in the sources as an Ifrit, a much more powerful, often malevolent type of genie now bound to serve whoever holds the lamp. This Ifrit is capable of great works, monumental feats, creating castles, conjuring armies, providing infinite wealth.
And Aladdin, the former ne'er-do-well, now controls this immense power. What's the first thing he uses it for? Not just survival anymore.
No. Ambition kicks in immediately. He sees the Sultan's daughter, the Princess Bedril Badur, and is instantly smitten. He decides he must marry her. He uses the slave of the lamp not just for food and comfort, but for a rapid, almost vertical climb into the highest ranks of society.
How does he even get the Sultan's attention? He's still technically the son of a poor tailor.
The jewels. Remember the glass fruit he picked? His mother takes them to the Sultan as a potential gift, hoping to petition for the princess's hand. She carries them in a simple porcelain bowl.
And the Sultan's reaction?
Astonishment. He and his court realize these aren't glass at all. They're enormous gems of unparalleled quality and value. The splendid sparkle, the text says, instantly wins the Sultan's favor. Suddenly, this poor woman has the Sultan's full attention, Fortune, literally in a bowl, buys immediate social access.
But there's always politics. The Grand Vizier steps in.
Ah, yes, the vizier, the chief minister. His own son was already promised the princess. He sees these jewels and is described as being pale with fear and envy. He tries to downplay them, suggesting they might just be clever glass imitations.
Does it work?
No. The light flashing off the gems apparently makes his lie obvious. It flashes back the purposed lie in his teeth. He's forced to admit they're real, and their worth might possibly equal the entire kingdom's treasury. But he's cunning. He doesn't block the marriage outright. He convinces the Sultan to demand an impossible bride price, or dowry, thinking Aladdin could never meet it. He buys time, arguing for a 3-month delay.
What's the impossible demand?
It's deliberately outrageous. The Sultan, prompted by the vizier, demands 40 large golden bowls, identical to the one the jewels came in, each filled to the brim with more jewels of the same quality. These bowls must be carried by 40 beautiful female slaves, each attended by a black slave, all gorgeously attired. It's not just wealth, it's a logistical nightmare, a display of resources beyond any merchant's capability.
Impossible for a normal person, but not for the lamp.
Exactly. Aladdin goes home, rubs the lamp, the Ifrit appears. Aladdin makes the request, and the Ifrit delivers. Instantly. The procession arrives at the palace, the slaves, the gold bowls overflowing with gems. The sheer spectacle overwhelms everyone. The Sultan is stunned. The vizier is speechless. Aladdin has used magic to purchase undeniable social and political standing. There's no arguing with that level of wealth.
And then comes the palace, the ultimate power play.
Right. Aladdin still needs to solidify his position. He appears before the Sultan not as a humble petitioner, but riding a magnificent white stallion decked out in jewels himself, scattering gold to the crowds. The Sultan is charmed by his appearance, his courtliness. He loves him instantly. But the real proof, the palace built overnight. Overnight, the Sultan grants Aladdin land near the royal palace. Aladdin commands the Ifrit. The next morning, the Sultan looks out his window and sees a palace. An architectural marvel of porphyry, jasper, alabaster, inlaid with gold, silver, intricate mosaics, complete with stables, horses, grooms, kitchens, cooks, everything. A fully functioning, impossibly luxurious palace that simply wasn't there the day before.
That's got to raise some questions about sorcery, surely. Even for a sultan impressed by jewels.
It does. And this is where Aladdin shows remarkable shrewdness, not just reliance on the lamp's raw power. The Sultan visits the palace, is amazed, but perhaps a little unnerved by the perfection, the sheer impossibility of it. He notices one small detail. A single niche in the grand kiosk, the main pavilion, is left undecorated. Plain stone.
Intentional.
Absolutely intentional by Aladdin. The Sultan points it out. Aladdin feigns slight embarrassment and explains he left it incomplete deliberately, in order to raise a doubt in my mind and then dispel it. He wanted the Sultan to see that even with all his wealth, some things might still require the Sultan's own touch.
Ah, clever. What's the next step?
Aladdin challenges the Sultan to finish that one niche using jewels from the royal treasury. The Sultan agrees, sends his best jewelers with baskets of the finest gems. They work for days, use up all the available royal jewels, and still can't replicate the richness or fill the space properly.
Making the sultan's wealth look inadequate compared to Aladdin's seemingly magical source.
Exactly. But more importantly, Aladdin then says, "Allow me," rubs the lamp secretly, and the Ifrit instantly fills the niche with jewels far surpassing anything the Sultan owned. But the crucial part is that the Sultan tried. He invested his own legitimate earthly treasury, his royal resources, into completing a part of this magical structure.
That's the political genius. It makes the sultan complicit. It ties the magical fortune to the legitimacy of the state. It dispels the fear that it's all just dangerous sorcery because the sultan himself contributed to it, validated it with his own wealth.
Precisely. Aladdin proves that even magically generated fortune needs political finesse and a deep understanding of human psychology, especially royal psychology, to be truly secure. But of course, security built on a magical object is inherently fragile.
Because the object can be lost or stolen.
And it is. The accursed sorcerer back in Africa uses his dark arts to discover that Aladdin is alive, powerful, and married to the princess, all thanks to the lamp. He travels back to Cathay, disguised again. And he comes up with this infuriatingly simple yet brilliant plan.
The new lamps for old trick.
The new lamps for old trick. He walks through the streets near Aladdin's palace, carrying a basket of shiny new lamps, crying out his offer. "Princess, Bedrel Badur hears the cry. She remembers seeing an old, dirty, tarnished lamp sitting forgotten on a shelf in Aladdin's private chamber, the magic lamp, which he has no idea is special, thinking she's doing Aladdin a favor, getting rid of junk.
As she trades it.
She trades the source of all their wealth and power for a shiny, new, worthless lamp. The sorcerer gets his hands on the prize he sought all along.
And the consequences are immediate and devastating.
Instantaneous. The sorcerer rubs the lamp, commands the Ifrit, "Take this palace," he orders, "with me and the princess and all its contents, and transport us immediately to the remotest corner of my homeland in Africa." And whoosh, the palace vanishes from Cathay overnight.
Leaving Aladdin with nothing and facing a very angry sultan who thinks he's been tricked by sorcery after all.
Exactly. His fortune, his wife, his status gone in an instant. He's about to be executed. But he remembers the other magical item.
The ring.
The ring. He rubs it. The slave of the ring appears. Aladdin asks to be transported to wherever his palace and the princess are. The ring grants his wish. He finds himself outside his own palace, now sitting in the middle of Africa.
So how does he get the lamp back this time? The sorcerer won't be fooled again.
He can't use force against the lamp's power. He needs cunning. And he needs the princess's help. He gets a message to Bedrel Budur. The counterplot requires immense bravery from her. She has to pretend she's accepted her fate, that she's warming to the sorcerer.
Play along.
Play along. Invite the sorcerer to dine with her. Treat him with favor. And then, during the meal, she must drug his wine.
With what?
The text specifies benj, a powerful narcotic powder called the son of an instant, for its fast-acting effects. She gets some from Aladdin. She pours the red wine, secretly adds the benj, offers it to the sorcerer with feigned affection. Crucially, she confirms first that he carries the lamp hidden in his bosom.
He drinks it.
He drinks it down. The benj works instantly. He collapses, unconscious or dead. Aladdin rushes in, retrieves the lamp from the sorcerer's robe.
And so the magical fortune is restored. But notice the final victory isn't won by magic versus magic.
That's a key point. The Ifrit doesn't fight the sorcerer. Aladdin doesn't use the ring's power offensively. The dervish is defeated by human courage. The princess's willingness to risk everything combined with human deception and a potent earthly drug. Strategy and bravery reclaim the magical power.
Okay, so we've covered fortune through brutal survival and fortune through magical shortcuts combined with cunning. But what happens when the rules themselves are fluid? When fate isn't just bad luck or a monster, but depends entirely on the absolute, maybe even arbitrary, power of the ruler.
Right. This takes us to our third pillar, the world shaped by irony and the Khalifa's will. And the central figure here is the Khalifa himself, Harun ar-Rashid.
The sources paint a fascinating picture of him. He's not just ruling from the palace. He has this famous whim, as the texts call it, to wander his city, Baghdad, in disguise, usually dressed as a merchant.
And not alone. He typically goes with his trusted Grand Vizier, Jafar, and significantly Mesrur, his chief executioner.
The presence of the executioner is key, isn't it? It's a constant reminder that even when he's just being curious, wandering around to see how his people are faring, the ultimate power of life and death is walking right beside him. His curiosity is backed by the sword.
Absolutely. And he seems drawn to drama, to unusual situations. Our sources place him one night arriving at a house with 3 elegant ladies. Above their door is an inscription. "Ask not what doth not concern thee, lest thou hear what may not please thee."
Which naturally just makes the Khalifa even more determined to find out what's going on inside. He cannot resist a mystery or a prohibition.
Exactly. He basically forces his way in, along with Jafar and Mesrur, and inside they find not just the 3 ladies, but 3 other men, mendicants or calendars, dressed like wandering holy men, and there's something striking about them.
They're all missing an eye. Each one lacks his right eye.
Precisely. And the supreme irony, which unfolds as they're forced to tell their stories, is that these aren't just random beggars. They are, or were, kings. 3 kings, each blinded in one eye, brought together by strange twists of fate in Baghdad, all vaguely seeking an audience with the Khalifa they don't realize is sitting right there listening.
Their stories are incredible, and they serve as these profound warnings, don't they? Cautionary tales about the incredibly high price of folly, and especially curiosity.
Definitely. Let's look at the consequences they faced, because this really gets to the philosophy underpinning a lot of the knights. The first calendar, who was a prince, lost his eye because of a simple accident, compounded by politics. He was hunting with a crossbow.
Aiming at a bird.
Aiming at a bird, missed, and the bolt accidentally struck out the eye of his father's vizier, who was nearby. A terrible accident. But years later, that same vizier usurped the throne, killed the calendar's father, and then, as an act of deliberate revenge for the long-ago accident.
He intentionally had the prince's eye thrust out.
Exactly. So the blindness wasn't just fate or accident. It was the result of a political grievance, nursed over time and enacted with cold-blooded vengeance once power shifted. A chilling lesson in court politics.
Then there's a second calendar, Prince Aimar. His story is about curiosity mixed with, well, drunken passion leading to disaster. He was apparently an expert calligrapher.
A very refined skill. He discovers a hidden underground palace where a beautiful lady is held captive by a powerful Ifrit. The Ifrit visits her only once every 10 days. Aimar falls in love with her.
Okay, sounds romantic, but dangerous.
Extremely. Driven by love and maybe too much wine, Aimar gets impatient. He finds the magic talisman or panel that summons the Ifrit and deliberately breaks it, forcing the Ifrit to appear early, before the appointed 10th day.
He broke the rules of the enchantment. Bad idea.
Terrible idea. The Ifrit appears absolutely furious. He knows instantly what happened. He drags the terrified lady forward and gives her a horrific choice. Kill Aimar with this sword or be tortured and killed herself.
What does she do?
She refuses to kill Aimar. So the Ifrit carries out his threat. He brutally tortures her. The text says her hands and feet are cut off before finally beheading her. And then, as punishment for Aimar's transgression...
He doesn't kill him.
No, something arguably worse. He transforms Aimar into an ugly, hairy man-ape. Crucially, Aimar retains his human mind and understanding, but loses the power of speech. He's trapped inside this monstrous form.
That's a terrifying fate. Curiosity and passion literally cost him his humanity and led to the brutal death of the woman he loved. How does he ever get out of that?
His unique skill saves him, his calligraphy. As an ape, he's eventually captured and brought before another king. This king notices the ape seems intelligent. They give him parchment, and Aimar, the ape, writes beautiful verses in exquisite script.
Communicating through his art.
Yes. The king is amazed. And luckily for Aimar, this king has a daughter, the Lady of Beauty, who is herself incredibly skilled in magic. 70 different rules of magic, the text boasts. She recognizes immediately that this isn't a real ape, but an enchanted man, Prince Aimar.
So she can break the spell.
She can, but it requires a tremendous magical battle. She confronts the Ifrit, who enchanted Aimar. It's an epic clash of transformations. The Ifrit turns into a lion, she becomes a sword. He turns into a scorpion, she becomes a serpent. He becomes an eagle, she counters. Finally, he transforms into a single pomegranate seed.
Trying to hide
among other pomegranate seeds scattered on the floor. The princess transforms into a rooster and starts pecking up all the seeds, devouring them. She gets almost all of them. But one seed rolls away, unseen.
Oh no, the Ifrit escapes.
Not quite escapes, but transforms again. That last seed turns into a raging fire. The princess, to combat it, transforms herself into a counterfire or perhaps water. The text is a bit ambiguous, but the struggle consumes her. She defeats the Ifrit, reducing him to a heap of ashes, but the effort burns her out completely. She dies, leaving a second heap of ashes beside the Ifrits.
So, Aimar is restored to human form, but the cost was the life of the princess who saved him.
Exactly. It's a tragic victory. Restoring his fortune, his form, required the ultimate sacrifice from the only one skilled enough to do it. It shows that even curiosity aimed at rescue can unleash forces that demand a terrible price.
And the third calendar. His story is maybe the most direct warning against curiosity.
Explicitly so. He calls his blindness the result of impertinent curiosity. His tale starts with losing his entire fleet to the legendary Mountain of Lodestone, a magnetic mountain that pulls all the nails and iron fittings out of ships, causing them to fall apart.
Another classic mariner's legend.
Right. He survives, naturally, and finds himself near the mountain. Following instructions from a dream, he climbs a difficult path to a dome on the summit. There he finds a brass horseman statue holding a tablet. Using a brass bow and lead arrows, also revealed in the dream, he shoots the horseman, which falls into the sea. This supposedly breaks the magnetic curse.
So far, so good. Fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, but then his curiosity gets the better of him. He's later taken in by 10 well-dressed young men living in a magnificent underground palace. There's just one catch.
They're all missing an eye.
All missing their right eye. And they give him one simple rule. Enjoy everything here, but whatever you do, do not open that golden door over there.
The forbidden door.
Classic.
Absolutely classic. And of course, he becomes obsessed with it. The narrative says he is driven by the devil, meaning his own overwhelming curiosity to open it. He waits till the others are asleep, opens the golden door, and finds
What's behind it?
a magnificent black steed standing in a stable of unbelievable splendor. It seems tame. He leads it out, mounts it, and foolishly strikes it with a whip he finds nearby.
And the horse?
The horse rears, spreads wings he hadn't seen, and flies straight up into the sky at terrifying speed. It flies him over land and sea, and it suddenly plunges down towards a rooftop, throwing him off. As it flies away, it strikes him across the face with its tail.
Taking out his right eye.
Taking out his right eye, landing him right back where he started, blind in one eye, punished for disobeying the one simple warning. It's a recurring theme, isn't it? In all three stories, the calendars lose their eye, the organ of sight, of seeing, of curiosity, as a direct result of defying a warning, driven by hubris or passion or just plain nosiness. Their fate isn't random. It feels like a philosophical punishment. You chose to see what was forbidden, so now you see less.
Perfectly put. It's the price of unsanctioned knowledge or forbidden action in their world.
So we've seen curiosity punished in those below the Khalifa. What happens when the Khalifa himself is the one playing games with fate and perception? Let's shift to Abu Hassan, the story famously called The Sleeper Awakened.
Ah, yes. This one is less about magic and more about social commentary and the sheer caprice of absolute power. Abu Hassan starts off rich, spends half his fortune lavishly, and then when the money runs low, all his supposed friends abandon him instantly.
A familiar story.
Very bitter from this experience, he swears an oath. He will only entertain strangers now, and only for a single night each. That way, he gets companionship without the risk of false friendship or being exploited again. It's a defense mechanism.
And this habit makes him the perfect target for the Khalifa's particular brand of entertainment.
Exactly. Harun ar-Rashid, wandering in disguise, hears about this eccentric host and decides to be his guest for the night. He accepts Abu Hassan's invitation, and he's genuinely impressed. Abu Hassan puts on a magnificent feast, treats the disguised Khalifa with generosity, but also, crucially, with a complete lack of ceremony. He orders the merchant around like a servant, calls him his faithful slave for the evening.
Which, paradoxically, delights the Khalifa.
It delights him. He's tired of sycophants. He loves the honesty, the lack of bowing and scraping. He finds Abu Hassan witty and charming. So impressed, in fact, that he decides to play what the text calls a great jest on him.
The prank.
The prank. As Abu Hassan is falling asleep, the Khalifa secretly puts a drugged lozenge in his mouth, something containing Benj again. Abu Hassan falls into a deep stupor. The Khalifa then has him carried back to the royal palace, dressed in the Khalifa's own night clothes and placed in the royal bed.
And the crucial instruction to the court.
When Abu Hassan wakes up, everyone, courtiers, slaves, guards, ministers, must treat him exactly as if he's the Khalifa, the Prince of the Faithful. They must obey his every command without question. It's a test of the court's absolute subservience as much as a joke on Abu Hassan.
So Abu Hassan wakes up
Mhm.
in the palace, surrounded by bowing attendants.
Yep.
How does he react?
Utter confusion at first. He thinks he must be dreaming. He asks to be bitten, splashed with water, but everyone insists, you are the Prince of the Faithful. He slowly starts to accept it. He puts on the golden slippers, sits on the throne, and quite quickly he gets into the role. He starts issuing commands with growing authority.
What kind of commands?
Well, first, something nice. He summons his mother to the palace, she's bewildered, and orders the treasurer to give her 100 gold pieces, a nice windfall for her.
Yeah.
But then he remembers some old grievances.
Payback time.
Big time. He summons the wali, the chief of police, and he gives a very specific order concerning the local imam and 4 meddling sheiks from his old neighborhood who used to criticize his lifestyle and generally make trouble.
What's the order? It's quite famous.
It is. He orders the wali to give each of them 1,000 lashes, then bind them securely onto a mangy camel facing the tail. Parade them through the entire city with a crier proclaiming, "Behold the reward of fools who trouble their neighbors and interfere where they have no business."
Wow. That's specific and brutal. 1,000 lashes is often fatal.
It's incredibly harsh, and the public humiliation is extreme. What's fascinating is the political commentary embedded here. Within hours of being given absolute, unquestioned power, a common man's first thoughts turn to settling petty neighborhood scores using the full terrifying force of the state. It's a sharp critique of how easily power can be used for personal vendetta.
It really reveals the arbitrary nature of that kind of power, doesn't it? It suggests the Khalifa's real rule might be just as easily swayed by personal whim and settling scores as it is by grand statecraft.
Absolutely. A magnificent, if possibly lethal, abuse of temporary power. But the joke, of course, eventually turns back on Abu Hassan. The Khalifa finds the whole thing hilarious, especially the story of the punished imam and sheiks. But that evening, he arranges for Abu Hassan to be drugged again.
Back to square one.
Back to square one. He wakes up the next morning in his own house, in his own bed, wearing his own clothes. His mother is there, and he genuinely believes he is still the Khalifa.
Oh, dear. This isn't going to end well.
No, not at all. He starts ordering his mother around, calling her disrespectful for not acknowledging him as the Prince of the Faithful. She naturally thinks he's gone completely mad. He gets angry and starts beating her. The neighbors hear the commotion, rush in and find him raving.
So
They overpower him, bind him up, and take him off to the Maristan, the public madhouse, where the text chillingly adds he is regularly beaten by the keepers for days, maybe weeks, until he finally recants and admits brokenly that he was mistaken, that it must have all been a dream.
That's incredibly cruel. He's not punished for the commands he gave his Khalifa. The Khalifa actually enjoyed those. He's punished simply for failing to recognize when the prank was over, for failing to understand the boundaries of the Khalifa's arbitrary game.
It underscores the terrifying thin line between being the beneficiary of the Khalifa's favor, his boon companion for a day, and being the victim of his cruel jest. When Harun al-Rashid rewards him later for being entertaining, it's patronage. When he allows him to be thrown into a madhouse and beaten, it's just collateral damage from the royal amusement.
Does Abu Hassan ever recover?
He does. The Khalifa eventually feels a bit guilty, perhaps, or just wants another laugh. He arranges for Abu Hassan to be brought back to the palace, plays the Khalifa for a day trick again, confirms Abu Hassan now understands it was a prank, and then rewards him handsomely. He even arranges his marriage to one of the Khalifa Zubaydah's attendants, Nusad al-Fuad, who was her treasurer.
So a happy ending.
A temporarily happy ending. But Abu Hassan and Nusad al-Fuad, being used to high living, inevitably run through their money again because, as the text notes, their ability to spend always outstripped their income.
So what's the plan this time? No magic lamp here?
Pure human ingenuity and deception. Abu Hassan comes up with an elaborate scheme. They need money from the Khalifa and his wife, Zubaydah, who are known for giving generous funeral gifts, gold, silk brocade when someone connected to the court dies. So they decide to feign death.
Feign death. How?
They'll take turns. First, Nusad al-Fuad will pretend to die. Abu Hassan will go weeping to the Caliph Zubaydah, lamenting his wife's sudden demise. Zubaydah, grieving for her favorite attendant, gives him gold and silk for the burial. He takes it home.
Okay, step one complete.
Step two, a day or two later, Abu Hassan will pretend to die. Nusad al-Fuad will go weeping to the Khalifa Harun al-Rashid, lamenting her husband's death. The Khalifa, fond of his jester, gives her gold and silk for his burial.
It's audacious. Does it work?
It works perfectly. Twice. They get 2 sets of funeral endowments. But then things get complicated. The Khalifa and Zubaydah happen to be discussing their respective charitable gifts. Zubaydah mentions mourning poor Nusad al-Fuad. The Khalifa says, no, it was her husband, my friend Abu Hassan, who died. I just gave her money for his shroud.
Uh-oh. They start arguing.
A huge argument erupts. Who is actually dead? They get into an escalating wager over it. The Khalifa stakes his favorite pleasure garden against Zubaydah's magnificent hall of statues. They need definitive proof.
So they send someone to check.
First, the Khalifa sends Mesrur the executioner back to Abu Hassan's house. Mesrur arrives, asks who died. Nusad al-Fuad, playing her part, points tearfully to Abu Hassan laid out under a sheet. Mesrur reports back. Abu Hassan is dead. The Khalifa is furious, thinking Zubaydah tricked him.
But Zubaydah doesn't believe it.
No way. She sends her own trusted old woman servant. The old woman arrives, asks who died. Abu Hassan, now suddenly alive and well, points carefully to Nusad al-Fuad, laid out under the sheet. The old woman reports back. Nusad al-Fuad is dead. Now Zubaydah is furious at the Khalifa.
Meanwhile, Abu Hassan and his wife are just
sitting at the window, watching the messengers run back and forth, quickly switching places under the sheet depending on who's coming. They're orchestrating the chaos.
This is brilliant theater. How does it end?
The argument gets so heated, the wager so high, that the Khalifa and Zubaydah, along with their entire retinues, decide they have to go settle it in person. They all troop over to Abu Hassan's house to see the corpse for themselves.
And they find.
They burst in and find both Abu Hassan and Nusad al-Fuad sitting up, perfectly alive and well, probably trying not to laugh. The game is up.
What's the Khalifa's reaction this time? Execution?
Laughter. Utter, uncontrollable laughter from the Khalifa. He realizes he's been had by an incredibly elaborate, audacious con. instead of punishment for this massive public deception orchestrated against the highest office in the land.
He rewards them.
He rewards them. He gives them another 1,000 gold pieces on the spot, doubles their pension, and formally appoints Abu Hassan as one of his chief boon companions, a permanent member of his inner circle.
So, under Harun al-Rashid, fortune isn't just about survival or magic. It can be won simply by being clever, audacious, and maybe most importantly, entertaining enough to make the absolute ruler laugh instead of frown, surviving his jests and maybe playing a few good ones back.
That seems to be the ultimate lesson from Abu Hassan's story. Wit can be as valuable as wealth, especially when dealing with capricious power.
So after this deep dive into these incredible, complex stories, what does it all mean for you, the learner, listening today? What can we pull out? It seems clear that great fortune, however you get it, rarely seems to last in these tales without some kind of profound wit or resourcefulness backing it up.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it comes from magic or sheer grit. Look at Sindbad surviving impossible situations using just a wooden bowl or fermented grape juice. Or Aladdin, who has the ultimate magical power but still needs political maneuvering, that clever trick with the Sultan's jewels to solidify his place. Success always seems tied to adapting, to thinking your way through the immediate constraints.
And there's that stark contrast in how fate operates. Sindbad represents this kind of rugged individualism where fate, or maybe God's will in the story's context, always seems to save him in the end, even when his actions are, shall we say, morally dubious, like in the burial vault.
Right. Whereas the royal calendars seem to represent the opposite. Their fates are determined entirely by their own actions specifically, their folly and curiosity. They make a choice, ignore a warning, and bam. The consequence is direct, personal, and often horrific, like losing an eye or their human form. They pay a philosophical price for their choices.
And then there's the nature of ultimate power itself, personified by Harun al-Rashid. It's fascinating that his power in these stories isn't primarily shown through conquest or grand acts of justice. It's shown through these elaborate games, this social manipulation, this use of absolute authority for, essentially, entertainment.
And it highlights that razor-thin line between a king's command and a cruel jest, as we saw with Abu Hassan. Being useful, or even just funny to the sovereign, seems like the most valuable asset you could have in that Baghdad. More valuable, perhaps, than gold itself.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to maybe mull over. The source material describes another journey of Sindbad's, where he visits the magnificent king of Serendib, a really powerful, wealthy monarch. And there's this striking custom described.
Ah, yes, the criers.
Exactly. Before this great king walks a crier, shouting praises, exalting him. But behind the king walks another crier, constantly proclaiming something quite different.
He proclaims, "Great is he, but he will die. Again, again, and again I say it, he will die."
So considering all the magical protections we've seen with Aladdin, the inexhaustible wealth, Sindbad's unbelievable resourcefulness and survival skills, the Khalifi's absolute political power, none of it ultimately changes that fundamental truth announced by the second crier. So the question to leave you with is, what knowledge or what power is truly required to prepare for that ultimate inescapable fate, the death that even the crier for the great king of Serendib cannot ignore and must announce daily?
Something for you to explore on your own. Until the next deep dive, keep questioning the source.